I am Master Sergeant Roy Aldridge. I was born in Ardmore, Oklahoma, September the 10th, 1934. In 1949, my two cousins and I joined the Oklahoma National Guard. We both forged our parents' signatures on the papers, and at that time everybody knew who we were in town because it was such a small town and they didn't care.
So you were 15? 16?
16.
16?
Yeah.
So you have to be 17 to join, right?
Yes, with your parents' permission. And there was no wars going on, and we were all farm boys. We were all raised on the farm, raised by primarily by my grandparents, and we were like brothers. I have no other siblings, and so we just thought it was a lark. We'd join the Army and make some extra money. Well,
you were able to join the National Guard, but at the same time you were only serving there for weekend or so, right?
Just
so
weekend.
Right,
weekend
so you could work on your farm too,
yeah.
right? That's wonderful, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it was nice. It was extra pocket change.
You're right.
And
why not?
Why not? So, in June the 25th, 1950, we were on our way to summer camp from Ardmore, Oklahoma to Fort Hood, Texas.
Summer camp of what?
National Guard.
Oh.
Summer. We've been activated for our 2 weeks summer camp duty. So we get into a town in Texas, just across the border, called Louisville, and we were stopped by the Texas Highway Patrol and a young Army officer who said that the North Koreans had invaded South Korea and we were getting ready to be activated. So I went ahead and I volunteered for the paratroopers, and they sent me to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and that's where I took my training, initial training. And they were already had a regiment formed there called the 187th Regimental Combat Team Airborne. We're part of the 11th Airborne. And then they loaded us on a ship in August of 1950, and we went down through the canal and on into Panama Canal.
Panama Canal.
And went into, the main unit went into Japan, into Soropo, Japan, on Hokkaido Island, and our unit went to Busan. Well, in September, we came out, September the 10th, my birthday, we pulled out of the perimeter and boarded some ships, and we went around on up towards Incheon, and we went on up in what they call the Kempo Peninsula, and we made the landing there, or the 3rd Battalion made the landing there, along with the 5th GHQ Raider Battalion.
You're talking about Incheon landing?
I'm talking about the Incheon landing, but we went up further north to what they call the Kempo Peninsula.
When was that?
That was
September 15th?
September 15th, 1950. Yeah.
So Incheon and Gimpo Peninsula at the same time?
Yeah.
At the same time?
Same time.
Okay.
And then the rendezvoused up with the Marines, and the Marines went on, and us, the Army, captured Kempo Air Base, and we set up, our unit set up temporary headquarters there. And the rest of the 187th Regimental Combat Team came in. In the meantime, the 8th Army was coming up from the south, and we were sort of boxing off the North Korean Army.
Was there any severe resistance when you landed at
Oh yes,
Kimpo?
yeah.
But I heard that there was not much resistance in Incheon.
Well, there was, well, we ran into our severe resistance, I guess about 6 hours into the invasion as we moved on inland.
Please describe me in more detail about the landing situation. When was it? It was in the...
It was in the dark.
Yeah.
And where at Incheon, they had to put the Marines in because of the tides. We were further up north, and the Marines had already occupied, I can't remember the name of the island there at Incheon. We're getting ready for it to go on in. Well, we came in on the higher tide and went into the Kimpo Peninsula.
Yeah.
We were inland about 6 hours.
Oh, okay.
Then the North Korean, we ran into severe heavy resistance. It took us 2 days to capture Kimpo Air Base.
Wow, 2 days.
Yeah.
Give me more detail about how you engaged in what kind of battle there.
It was just, we bring in a lot of fire. And, you know, we were getting help from the Navy, and it was just walking and flat overrunning the enemy. They would fall back, and we had a little hand-to-hand, but nothing to say. But you know, we just kept advancing.
You were scared?
Yes. Terrified.
Terrified.
Anybody who's been in combat says they weren't scared, they're liars.
You're liars, right?
How
And that
liars?
was the major battle, the first major battle that you engaged, right?
No, my first major battle was up on the in the Pusan perimeter.
Busan perimeter.
Yeah.
How long you were there at Busan?
We were at Pusan from, like I say, 28th, 29th, 31st, somewhere in there of August to September the 10th. Then we pulled out and went around for the invasion.
I read a history book that it was really, really intensive and desperate
Yes.
situation.
We had our backs to the water, had our backs to the sea. It was a Dunkirk. Those who remember World War II, it was a Dunkirk. I mean, if we hadn't held the lines at Pusan, there would be no South Korea today. None.
Right.
We were outnumbered something like 20 to 1, and we were building up. But Pusan, as I've said many times, is where we drew the line in the sand and says, no, you're not coming any further. And we held the enemy and defeated them.
And you never heard about Korea before, right?
Never heard of Korea before.
How did you feel about risking your own life in a country where you never heard about before?
I'm an Oklahoma farm boy. Born and raised in Oklahoma, raised on a farm, small farming town. And if a neighbor was in trouble, and even if we didn't know him, we went and helped. And that's how I looked at it, is we had a friend in trouble, and we went to help.
Right?
We set up our headquarters there. The 187th came in. The whole unit came in. General MacArthur wanted us to do an airdrop. We did a couple of practice drops on the Han River after Seoul was captured. And he wanted us to do a drop up north to cut off the North Korean retreat and to liberate a large contingent of prisoners of war. On D-Day, they were supposed to go, there was such intense fog.
D-Day of
October the 19th was when we were supposed to go. There was such fog, the aircraft could not take off. And the fog held up until October the 21st. And that's when the aircraft took off, and it was a daylight drop. 1st Battalion and 3rd Battalion, 1st Battalion dropped at Sukan, and the 2nd, 3rd Battalion, my battalion, we dropped at Sichuan and Sukan. There we go, I'll get it right. And
so 3rd Battalion landed what airdrop in where?
Sukan. Sukan. And I can show you on the maps.
Yeah.
My Korea is not that good. The town has been quite a while. And there was 2 drops, Sukan and Sushan.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, we dropped at Sushan.
Sushan.
1st Battalion dropped at Sukan.
Mm-hmm.
And we were to hold, and this was north of Pyongyang.
North of Pyongyang, yes.
North of Pyongyang. And so the American troops had already come across the 38th, and we were supposed to rendezvous with the Australians. And the North Koreans, when we broke their will, it was just, they just shed their uniforms,
Mm-hmm.
put on the civilian clothes, and fled out into the hills. And we just more or less had a fairly clean shot going north. Not that much resistance. We got into the, but there was still a lot of the regular army, regular North Korean army, who were the professionals that were holding the ground. We had Australians, Turks, and Greeks in our sector. We found the prisoners of war in the train tunnels,
Mm-hmm.
and they were all dead.
Oh, so killed by the North Koreans?
Yes. They were all dead. They were all dead. And we heard that night a lot of noise, and we thought it was the Australians coming up towards us. Well, it turned out to be a full regiment of North Korean professionals, so we got in a little firefight that we came out pretty good. We came out good. We're still, a bunch of us still here to talk about it. And then we got relieved. The comical things, when the North Koreans, we stopped them and we started in daylight, and we called for air support. And we had one company move ahead of the panels, and the Australians aircraft came in and started strafing the troops. We got on the radio and says, hey, this is us. And I'll never forget this one pilot says, "You bloody Yanks, don't move past your panels." So they pulled them back. But we were like, we did exactly what we were supposed to do. We cut the retreat off. Unfortunately, we didn't get there in time for the prisoners. We rendezvoused. Now, we were a special unit. We were a special airborne unit. You have to stop there. We were the first airborne unit that was completely self-contained. 2nd Battalion came in the following day, and with them they brought in airdrop, artillery, trucks, jeeps, and
Sea ration.
sea rations and ammunition.
So you got everything.
We were completely self-contained. So when we turned from a holding position, we turned 180 degrees to an attack position. We were fully self-contained. We had our own medics, we had our own artillery, we had our own vehicles, and we were fully mechanized, and this is all delivered by air, the first time it had ever been done in warfare.
Mm-hmm.
So we got our orders and we turned north. All right. So now, in November, it's about November the 5th, and so we turned north. We had 2 battalions go up the east, In my battalion, they put us with the 7th Infantry Division. The other 2 battalions were set up with the 2nd Infantry Division. Well, the 7th Infantry Division, along with the 1st Marines, went up towards the north to Chosin. It was so cold. I've told people this, and people look at me like I'm crazy. We had to put our canteens underneath our armpits to keep the water from freezing. Wounded, the plasma would freeze in the lines. We had to keep our hands around the lines to help the wounded to keep the plasma flowing. The medics, we didn't have plastic bags now like they have now, had the bottles in their crotch. They wore crotch kits and wrapped extra blankets around to keep the plasma from freezing. We were experiencing, I never figured out exactly, I've heard so many temperatures. Now these are actual temperatures, they're not chill factors. We didn't know a chill factor back then. We were experiencing 40 to 50 below zero. Some people had 60 below zero.
Fahrenheit.
Fahrenheit. That was actual temperature, not chill factor. Plus we had the wind on top of it. So probably
60.
we were sensing 100, 110 degrees below zero, you know, with a chill factor.
Wow. It
was just brutal. And I still don't have hair on my feet and my hands, back of my hands and stuff. I got patches all over my body that were frozen and there's no hair. And anyway, it was about 4 o'clock in the morning
Of?
on the 25th of November. I never heard such screaming and noise and bells and sirens and bugles and drums, cymbals, and then the artillery started, and here comes a mass of humanity. I mean, a mass of humanity.
Did you see in your eye?
I saw it.
How close was it?
Well, I guess when they broke in past on coming down on top of us, first ones we saw about less than 3 blocks away, and time we got rallied enough to get ready, they weren't, the first person I shot wasn't any further than you. I mean, they were just coming. And these guys didn't have weapons. They didn't have guns. These were called, as we call it, in chess, they're pawns. All right? You can sacrifice them. And they just came down. Some of them had guns, but not all of them. And they were taking our weapons. They were people just threw down their weapons and ran. I mean, you couldn't stop them. And
it's a miracle that you survived.
And
right?
I think it was. I believe deeply in God. I had an angel sitting on my shoulder. That's exactly how I feel. We had this Master Sergeant Withers holler at me and says, "Aldridge, grab your men and follow me." Well, I grabbed what I had, which wasn't many left, out of 120 men. There wasn't there was only about 35, 40 of us left. And we followed Withers, and we were headed out down to where we knew where the Marines might have been. We were pulling back, and we had our weapons, but a lot of the soldiers were caught in their sleeping bags. We were going home for Christmas. We were getting ready for Thanksgiving dinner.
They were sleeping.
And we had our Arctic sleeping bags. I was just, unfortunately, I was on duty that night. And they were caught in their sleeping bags and killed in their sleeping bags. They couldn't get out. At that time, it was the old style sleeping bag that you had to reach up and zip. Later they came out with the breakaway zipper where you could do it like that, and the zipper would break open and you could get out. and they were caught in their bags. And then we used them for body bags to help pull them out, some of them.
How many were you there before Chinese attack?
We had a battalion, and that was a little over 500 troops.
And you just left in
We
30
just-
to 40?
And my company has less than 40 alive, around 25, 30, and 40, somewhere in there. And I grabbed what I could, and we followed this sergeant. And he got killed right away. And so we were pulling out to the south and to the east, and the Chinese were coming in between us and over to the left of us or right of us. And they were behind us, they were just everywhere. It's just like if you went to an ant pile and dug up the ants. That's exactly what they were. As the ones that had weapons were killed, the other ones would pick up their weapons. The big breakout was the Air Force dropping that bridge because the Chinese had our backs to this canyon. I'd say it's maybe 100 feet, 200 feet wide, and very deep. And the Chinese were behind us, on the left of us, and on the right of us. And here we were with our back, we couldn't go any further. And the Air Force dropped that, and the engineers, and they scratched out a little runway so we could get a lot of the wounded flown out. They loaded the dead in the trucks, and we went across that bridge and just kept on going south and east until we got to Hanyang Harbor.
Hamon,
Yeah. And then we saw something I've never saw before in my life. Thousands, hundreds of thousands, it seemed like millions of refugees. And I was told, Aldridge, take your men, and I want you to go up and hold this one area. And I took my men, there's 25, 26 of us left. And we went up the road. We just come down. Well, we had the Army guys spread out, Marines guys spread out. And we set up a roadblock to stop the Chinese and the North Koreans from coming. And that's when they loaded all the civilians on the ships. And there was various stories you hear. I heard it was 120,000. I've heard it was 110,000. And today they said 104 or 5,000. And that's when I got hit in the leg. And
Munsanli, right?
yeah, and I got wounded in the leg, just above the knee, right there. And
Were Chinese, right?
Chinese, yeah.
Right.
And I got evacuated out, and that's when they found out how old I was. And I got discharged from the Army.
When was that? So it's going to be April?
April. I went to munitions school, conventional munition, air munitions school. And I was trained on a certain type of bomb fuse. And then they sent me back to Korea, to the 67th Tactical Reconnaissance Wing.
67th
Tactical Reconnaissance Wing at Kempo Air Force Base, K-14, Korea.
What did you feel when you were heard that you are going to Korea?
Well, I wasn't too happy because a lot of my class...
I bet that.
A lot of the guys were going to Germany and other places, but I had this special fuse training. And it was designed for a special device, a special new type of photo flash bomb, which was like a king-size flash bulb. It would generate something a little over 4 million candlelight power for just less than half a second. But they wanted it to go off because of night photography and they're flying reconnaissance missions, and they wanted to go off at a certain altitude so they could get bigger spread. Well, the bombs were going off too low or too high, and they were electronically set. So they asked me, being I was specially trained on them, to fly this mission. And it's supposed to be what we call a milk run, little or no resistance. I said, sure. So I put on my parachute, I got in this airplane.
How many were in the airplane?
There was 4
Like
of
you?
us.
Just 4 of you?
Yeah.
Wow,
And-
so 2 pilots?
And the guys in the back seat that had the electronics.
And
Actually,
you?
there was 5. They had a bomb sight, bombardier.
So you are the only one who were ordered to experiment this
Yeah,
special
yeah,
fuse.
I was the only one trained, specially trained for it. The rest of the class hadn't come, you know. And so we went on this what they call a milk run with little or no opposition, supposedly. Well, I'd hate to see because I swear you could get out and walk on that stuff at night and just flash, 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 and all of a sudden the airplane just boom, just shuddered, and the pilot immediately hit the bailout switch. It's a bell, and I had a parachute on the whole time because I was a passenger. And I opened up and I kicked the hatch out of the bomb bay doors, and I dropped out. And I think I tumbled.
How about others?
When I opened my chute, when I tumbled, just as I opened my chute, I saw the aircraft disintegrate.
So rest of them died in the
I
air?
was the only survivor.
Only survivor.
I was the only one that got out. And everybody's asked me, how high were we? All I can say is, when my chute opened, I swung about 3 times and hit the ground in a rice paddy, good Korean brown earth. And before I could get my chute completely off, they had me.
Do you remember the date?
Yeah, April the 13th.
April the 13th.
I don't know if it's a Friday or not,
Perfect.
you know, and
So that's 1953, April the 13th.
yes, and they blindfolded me. They hit me 2 or 3 times, and kept saying "Chunji, Chunji," and I kept saying "Gook, Gook," you know. It's like all of a sudden, it's really hard to visualize. My entire life squeezed down to the size of a pinhead. North Korean soldier captured me. My first interrogation was Chinese and North Korean, and the Chinese took me somewhere and then turned me over to the complete North Koreans. Now, of all the prisoner of war camps, the Chinese took them over from the North Koreans because in 1 week we lost over 1,600 prisoners of war at a camp that were run by North Koreans, and the Chinese were a little more humanistic than the North Koreans, and they took over the camps, so the treatments eased off a little bit. I was transferred into a camp, or what's officially called, it was a holding area, if you look at the maps of all the prisoners of war camps, called Pox Palace, P-A-K''S, Palace, P-A-L-A-C-E. And just outside of Pyongyang, North Korea. And I was put in a small cell, and I was given some gruel type soup, looked like a barley or something, oats and rice or something, and a small piece of bread to eat.
You said one meal a day, right?
One meal a day.
There was no light.
And no lights or anything. I mean, it was, what a total darkness. There was, you could see a little light like through the curtains or something like that, but you could see through the cracks of the cell.
But it was a building, right? Not tent or something.
No, this was a hard building.
Hard building,
This hard
yes.
building. They took me out of that and took me into a marbled hall. Very elegant hall. And there was 3 Koreans sitting up on this bench. And they were dressed in what I call native Korean dress. Very elegant. And they were all speaking Korean, North Korean. I don't know if there's a difference between the 2 languages, I still don't. And the one Korean officer sitting by me, he asked me my name, and I told him my name. And I said, I'm Airman Second Class, or Airman First Class Roy E. Aldridge, AF 19453530. And he asked me, did you drop bombs? And I said, unfortunately I said yes, because they knew, and
Was there a translator?
he was my translator.
And was it good enough?
I guess. Anyway, they stood up and read my name. I understood my name. And when it was all over with, my translator told me I was a war criminal, and I'd just been convicted for crimes against humanity, for biological and chemical warfare against the People's Republic of North Korea, and I was sentenced to die. And they tied my hands behind my back, walked me down the hall, and then they untied my hands and said, now, this is the interpreter. And another North Korean officer. And they hit me 2 or 3 times. And he says, if you sign these papers where you confess to doing crimes against humanity, you will receive life imprisonment. You will not die. Well, stubborn, I guess. I don't know. I would not disgrace my country. And I would not disgrace my family. And I told them to go to hell. No. And they hit me 2 or 3 more times and asked me to sign. I said no. Then they tied my hands behind my back, took me outside the compound, and I dug a hole, a shallow grave. And they tied my hands behind my back again, pushed me down on my knees, put a blindfold on me, and I felt the gun muzzle at the back of my head, and it went click. And they got me up, and I urinated all over myself and defecated over my pants. And they took me back to my cell. 6 times they did that to me.
6 times?
6 times.
They repeated 6 times of that?
Yes. And there was 20, 30 of us, I can't remember, I have no idea to this day how many were in there.
But you said that only Air Force, right?
Only Air Force. There was South African Air Force, Australian Air Force, British Air Force, U.S. Air Force. Prisoners there. And then one day, they came in, and time means nothing now. I have no idea what day it is or anything. They came in and they gave us clean clothes. We did get 3 ounces of rice once a week, and plus the gruel. And I used to save my bread. You know, they gave me a small piece of bread, so I'd save my bread, you know, and that's what kept me going. But I weighed 185 pounds. I weigh 205 pounds now. I weighed 185 pounds when we were shot down. I weighed 110 pounds when I was repatriated. So with the bread, I guess, and stuff, I sustained myself. And they came in and loaded us into trucks, cleaned us up, shaved, cut hair. We had one man that refused to shave and cut hair.
Why?
Just stubborn. And I didn't know him. I'd seen him. We called him the Mountain Man, because that's what he looked like. He had beard, long hair hanging down there. He looked like a, you know, what you think is a mountain man. And then we went out on the trucks. Once again, hands tied behind under your legs, blindfolded, head pushed down. And we took a ride for about, I don't know, I guess an hour. Maybe longer, I have no idea. I just more or less passed out. And they untied us and everything and told us to get out of the trucks. And we looked off. And I saw the prettiest sight in the world.
When was it?
September 4th, 1953. 6 days before my 19th birthday. And I saw the American flag. And I saw the UN flag, and I saw the South Korean flag.
Where was that? Was it Panmunjom?
Panmunjom. At the bridge of no return. And we were taken off the trucks. Go, go, go. And we formed up, my group anyway, 16 of us, and we walked across that bridge. And when we walked across the bridge, there was a Marine standing there, a shiny helmet, real sharp creases in his fatigues, sergeant, big mustache. I threw my arms around him. I kissed him. He says, "Welcome home, son." And we were taken on up to the processing tents, and they want to know who I was. I reported to them. It says, Airman First Class Roy E. Aldridge, AF 1945-3530. I said, he's going through his list. And he says, "I don't have you on my list. Where'd you come from?" I said, "Well, I'm here." I'm me. Who are you? I'm me. It sounds silly I said that, but that's what I said. Well, we were not prisoners of war. We were never reported by the Geneva Convention. We were war criminals, sentenced to death, so the United States or none of the other countries had any records that we were incarcerated.
So there is a difference between war criminal and prisoner of war.
Prisoner of war has rights under the
Geneva Convention.
War criminals has no rights whatsoever. You are an experiment. And we went to school at Livermore, and we studied nuclear physics, electronics, chemistry, biological effects of nuclear weapons. Then they transferred us to Albuquerque, New Mexico, at Sandia Scientific Laboratories on Kirtland Air Force Base. And we were given training on how to build and assemble atomic bombs and hydrogen bombs. All the enlisted men that I knew, I did get a chance to talk to the officers. I talked to some officers. But at one time during high school, and a lot of them had college, which I didn't have, studied chemistry, biology, higher mathematics, and physics at one time during high school.
You didn't?
I did.
You did?
I studied when I
But
was
that's a
in,
high school. You know, high school chemistry, high school physics. What do they teach? I mean, nothing.
nothing. But we had the capability that we could have, what they thought we might absorb. Of all the scientists in the Manhattan Project, the only person against it was Edward Teller. He did not want the military to touch any of the weapons. I went to Great Falls, Montana, and at Malmstrom Air Force Base, and we were just starting what we call generate. And the Cuban Missile Crisis started. And my team, I was a team chief, we assembled the first nuclear weapon, took it out and put it on the first Minuteman missile, and counted it down T-minus 10 seconds. I was the non-commissioned officer in charge of the Armed Forces School of Nuclear Weapons, and I retired. My orders read 1 February 1973. If it happens, if they ask me again, I'll go back in a heartbeat. I have no regrets going to Korea. I've seen what we did. We went back to Korea in 2006, and when there was only a pontoon bridge, a part of a rail bridge across the Han River, I see all these modern bridges. I see a modern metropolitan city of millions of people instead of a pile of rubble. Yongdong-po was just a trash heap. You'll see pictures of it. And I know what I did was good. They'll never take that away from me. And as far as the nuclear weapons go, my object in nuclear weapons was Khrushchev and the war planners in Russia says, hey, we can't go to war today, Chief, because Sergeant Aldridge's crew is on duty. And when I retired from the Air Force, I had no marketable civilian skill. Who wants a bomb builder in civilian life? So I went to school for nuclear medicine technology using radioactive tracers to look at different diseases. And I did that for 35 years. And we retired 5 years ago, completely. And I've dedicated my life to supporting the veterans of my country and other countries. I have no regrets of going into the United States military. I have no regrets going to Korea. I have no regrets going to Vietnam, because what I did in Vietnam, what we did in Vietnam, was good if we were allowed to do our job. When I go back to Korea, I'm very humbled for what the Korean government, the Korean people do for me. I find it hard to accept their generosity, because I went from picking cotton, from a defender to a liberator, and you just can't, people just can't understand that.
If there is a petition from our side, not to talk about whether North Koreans will sign or not, but just for symbolic reason, to say that we want to wrap this war, we want a closure on it, and let's replace the armistice with the peace treaty, and let's move on that direction.
Yes, sir.
Would you be willing to sign that
Yes,
petition?
sir. That's one piece of paper I'd be willing to sign. Yeah, I feel very strongly that the country should be unified. And that's what we tried to do until the Chinese intervened. And we had, you know, and that was the whole thing of the United Nations, was when they had told us to go north, was to unify and make one Korea. And I still think it should be one Korea, one flag.